Hey guys, welcome to a little bit of Monica. I am super excited because we are going into the 5th and final weekend of Halloweekend readathon. While I am very excited for this final weekend, I am really sad because it means that Halloweekend is coming to an end. And also October is coming to an end and spooky season's the best, so this is a little sad. However, I am really excited because I feel like we've got a lot of really fun things coming this weekend, and I have a stack of books ready on my TBR that I am hoping I can get through all of them. I just know this is going to be a great way to end out the season. For anyone who doesn't know what Halloweekend is, this is a month-long readathon that is ending this weekend, where we read books that fit prompts that were provided for us from the readathon. Big thanks to Lexi from Books with Lexi for creating and hosting this, as well as the other 4 co-hosts, because this has been such a fun time. I feel like I truly don't know what to expect from this weekend because I'm really excited to read these books, but like, it's gonna be sad that Halloweekend's over because this has been such a fun month. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that thinks that. There are events planned throughout the weekend, sprints and pumpkin carving or painting, and plenty of time for reading and getting in your final spooky books for the spooky season. Speaking of books for the spooky season, I am gonna go over my TBR with you and let you know which books I plan to read. As we know, my plans don't always go through the whole way, but I have a pretty set TBR, so I think this is going to work pretty well. The first book on my list is Slewfoot by Brom. This one is a tale of bewitchery. It's about a widow who starts to work with Slewfoot, who I believe is the devil, and it is in like a pretty strict Puritan town, I believe. So there's a lot of religious turmoil and concern when it comes to things of the devil and things that are improper. And so we're going to see the main character here. She's basically going to be an outcast and is trying to make her way. It sounds like her and the devil have only each other to depend on, which is a pretty weird pairing, but I'm really excited to see what this is. And I know that there are like full-size photos in the middle that I'm afraid to look at because I don't know if it's going to spoil anything for me, but I have this from the library and it's due in like a week. So I got to make sure I get through it this weekend, which shouldn't be a problem because this is going to be the first book that I focus on, simply because I don't own it and I'm going to have to give it back. But I am excited to get to this. I know so many people who have been reading it this season and have been really enjoying it. So this is going to be a really exciting one for me. The second book on my TBR is From Below from Darcy Coates. This has been on my month-long TBR all along. I just have been not putting it off, but I have had some other like time restricted priorities of other books that I needed to read. So this one ended up being pushed back to the last week. I'm using this for the prompt of something that scares you. And it is simply because me and Deepwater do not get along. I am not a strong swimmer. And so the very like idea of this book and it having to do with being underwater at some point, the cover itself is terrifyingly eerie and beautiful at the same time, and I don't even know what to expect. Darcy Coates is one of my favorite horror authors, and so I am so excited to get to this, and I have had this for a long time. I just haven't gotten around to reading it. So this is the perfect time. We're gonna close out Halloweekend by reading From Below. I'm gonna be terrified probably, but you know what? That's what I'm signing up for. So I am really excited for this one. From what I understand, this one kind of reminds me of the premise of Into the Drowning Deep. There's a ship that goes missing, and then some years later, another team is dispatched to go look for the wreckage or look and try to find out what happened to it. So it seems very similar to that. I will say I didn't love Into the Drowning Deep, simply because the first half was like super slow and I wanted to tear my hair out getting through like the first third of that book, maybe even the first half. So I'm hoping that this one is a little bit quicker paced at the beginning at least, and it's kind of chunky. I think this might be the thickest Darcy Coates book that I have at least. So that's a little concerning, but I really loved Into the Drowning Deep in general. Like I liked the story, and once it picked up, it was really, really good. But I really just like struggled to get through the beginning. But the premise sounds pretty similar to this book. So I'm hoping that it's gonna give me similar vibes, and that's a good sign because I really liked the vibes of Into the Drowning Deep. So the first 2 books that were on my list are gonna be my priorities because either I have to give them back to the library soon, or 2, because they've been on my list for the whole month and they've just been a priority all along. The last 2 on my list, I don't know which order I'm going to read them in. I think I know, but I honestly might change my mind when I get there and decide later. but they are going to be Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. This book has been on my list for a long time, and it was kind of on my Halloweekend TBR like for the month, but I ended up putting it off because I found some other books that fit the prompts a little bit better than this one did. This one I love because it is like, the beginning of it looks like an IKEA catalog. Not that I would know because I've never been to IKEA, but since I haven't been there yet, I guess this catalog is gonna have to do. But this book does follow a group of retail employees who decide to stay overnight in their store because they believe it might be haunted. So they're going to investigate and find out why things are going wrong overnight when nobody's there, and they're gonna see if they can witness it themselves. This sounds so exciting, and I cannot wait to read this book, simply because like I've worked retail, so I know what it's like to come in and find things not the way that you thought they would be, and you're just like, did I leave it like that? And you probably did, but in this case they probably didn't. So this is going to be a really fun read, and also I have read so much Grady Hendrix already this month. Why not just add one more, and it'll help me check more boxes off of the list of Grady Hendrix books that I have to read, and he has not let me down yet. So this one I feel fully confident in that it's going to be really good. This will probably be the third book that I read, but I haven't quite decided if I'm going to read this one first or if I'm going to read Up to the Challenge by Maria V. Snyder. This book is not horror, so it's a lot different from any of the other things that I've been trying to get through this month. This is a sci-fi and fantasy anthology, which is why I'm reading it, because of the bonus prompt that is reading something different. I don't read anthologies. I don't read short story collections that much, and so this is going to be a different vibe. They are all written by Maria V. Snyder, who, if anyone does not know, she is my favorite author. I have been obsessed with her books for more than 10 years at this point. Probably closer to like 13 or 14 years. I have read every single book that she has written, except for this one. And that's because it's an anthology and it intimidates me. It does have some fantasy stories and some sci-fi stories, and I have read both of those genres from Maria V. Snyder already. So like, I know I'm gonna like them, but for some reason I'm just intimidated by it. But it's finally time that I just jump in and see what this is like. So because it is so different, that is why I'm using it for my bonus prompt. And I do want to read this weekend, but I also know that this is nice because it is an anthology, so I can read it in pieces. I don't necessarily have to read it all in one go if I don't want to. I can break it up a little bit, which I might do since this is such a different genre than all the other books that I'm reading. Like, I could throw in a sci-fi short story in the middle between some of my other horror stuff. So I haven't quite decided how I'm going to do that, if I'm going to read this all in one go at the end, or maybe not at the end, or if I'm going to break it up, because all of those are different options. Also, I completely forgot, but I have a bookmark that matches the book. It was tucked inside the front cover, and I forgot that I even had this. However, I got it because I remember I got the book signed from her because I have met Maria V. Snyder multiple times. She actually comes to a local bookstore of mine. She wrote in my book, "Are you up to the challenge?" Of course. And I am now going to be up to the challenge of reading this anthology, even though I've been putting it off for a very long time. And I feel like 4 books is not actually that out of the question for this weekend, because I've read 2 to 3 books every weekend so far pretty consistently. I think I read 2 the first 2 weekends, and I read probably like 2.5 to 3 for the third weekend, and then weekend 4 I also read like 2.5 to 3. So I feel like because we have an extra 2 days in this weekend, because it extends into like actual Halloween on October 31st, which is a Tuesday, so we have like a couple of extra days in the weekend. So I'm hoping that that means I can get through a couple of extra books. I don't want to set my sights too high, but I also want to push myself. So I'm really excited to get through all of these books. I hope I can get through all of them. But even if I don't, I am excited to have a really good final weekend. So with that, let's dive in. Okay, I am starting my read of Slewfoot by Brahm. I am really excited for this book. I feel like I've seen a lot of people have been reading it this season, so I'm looking forward to getting into this. I borrowed a copy from my library and it's due back in like a week, so I'm definitely gonna try to get this done now. And I don't know a ton about it. It is a tale of bewitchery. I believe it's about a widow who is accused by her town of being a witch and working with the devil, and I I'm just so intrigued by this, so I am ready to dive in. I also feel like I've been reading a lot of stories similar to this lately, so I feel like it is very appropriate for this season, and that's about it. I really don't know what to expect other than like I am obsessed with the cover. Like this is just so pretty, and I'm excited because this book has like photographs in the middle, and I don't know what they're like for or about yet, but I'm really excited to find out. For the author event with Ashley Winstead and Danielle Valentine. I just pulled up to the library. I'm waiting for Lexi to get here because we're gonna grab lunch and then we're gonna get ready for the event. It sounds like it's like a panel talk with at least those two, plus I think there's going to be a couple other authors for this whole event. I did not recognize any of the other names, but I think there's going to be a number of people here. And then, so like a panel talk, and then I guess like separate signings for everybody. And I'm not sure what else to expect, but I am really excited for today. I listened to an audiobook on my way down here, so I figured I'd give a little bit of update on that. I started listening to From Below from Darcy Coates, and I actually think that listening to it on audio, like while I'm driving, maybe is gonna help me not be as terrified of all the underwater spookiness. So it is about a like documentary team that is doing a deep dive to the wreckage of the Arcadia, which I don't actually know how long ago it was. I think they said 90 years maybe since the like ship wrecked, and it's a mystery as to what caused it, what happened to the people. There were some very mysterious emergency calls to like other ships in the area, but nobody really knows what happened to the ship, to the people on it. So this team is going down to investigate, and they have like cameras and stuff attached to their like dive suits. There's a team of 5 people who are diving, and then there's a couple people that are left on the ship above, and things are like looking really sketchy. Right now they are still just like investigating the ship, so they're down below and like seeing some really weird things that are causing them to question, but not sure what it means. And I feel like the most nervous part for me is one of the divers, Aiden, I think is his name. He's been lying about his oxygen levels. It sounds like he barely passed his diving exams and like certifications, so like he really should not be there. He's super nervous, he's breathing really heavy, he's using up his oxygen, and when they do the oxygen checks, he's lying and telling them he has more than he really does, which is definitely going to come back and bite him in the butt. I don't know what's going to happen, if he's going to run out of oxygen or what, but I think that part has me the most nervous, is like the actual like equipment malfunction, because that's more realistic. I think that's a more realistic fear than like the underwater monsters, whatever it is. I don't even know what they're up against at this point, but like if it's like a underwater ghost or like underwater monster, like that's less realistic of a like problem that a real person could face than just like equipment failure that deep underwater. So I think that's why it's so scary to me. But I still got a long way to go. So far, it's really good. It's really interesting, and I'm like nervous for them, but I can't wait to like keep listening later.
Would have meant another red light or people getting killed. So they stopped that. Of these big houses.
Says readers beware, you're in for a scare.
Ooh, fun stuff.
To myself, what book could I choose that could believably make a teen girl just go absolutely gaga and be obsessed? And I remembered Twilight and the mania surrounding Twilight and the midnight release parties and the girls crying into their cameras, you know, on social media over, you know, Edward or Jacob. And I thought, oh, this is perfect.
Oh my god. I have to redo this book now. I'm really scared I'm gonna mess it up. Lexi just gave her beautiful copy to Ashley, who's obsessed with it.
I have these, but
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm gonna include a quick note. This is another book that I was reading this weekend that I didn't actually include in my TBR, but I've been buddy reading Wolf Song by TJ Klune with Michelle, and we started it on like Tuesday or Wednesday. This book is so freaking long. It's taken us like almost a full week to get through it. This book could have been half as long, and like I don't understand why there is so much book. This is a werewolf supernatural or romancy type thing. A human who starts to become like involved with the werewolf family. Essentially, you kind of know like really early on that he's like mated or going to be mated to one of the family members. The weird thing is that it's a child. So this is giving me Jacob and Resesame vibes like the whole way through, and I was a little bit uncomfortable by that, and by a little bit I mean very uncomfortable. It was a 10-year-old boy who like chose a 16-year-old human as his like that's my person, and it was just weird. Like nothing really happened between them until they were older and the wolf kid was 17, but like the whole thing was just really weird and mildly uncomfortable. And then there was like the world's longest smut scene, and it was like the world's longest chapter and it was super graphic, like so graphic and long, and I just like it was unnecessary. I mean, just like the whole book being incredibly long was unnecessary. I want to say, like, I didn't hate this book. I think the story was really interesting, and like a lot of the characters individually I really liked, but it just was way too long, and I feel like a lot of things kept repeating. Like, Ox had a lot of issues with his father, who told him, you know, a lot of things and didn't care about him, and then he left when he was a child. And Ox brings up the exact phrases that his dad used, like, to insult him, essentially, and, like, talk down to him. He, like, kept bringing it up, which in a way I get, but I feel like he brought up those conversations, like, so many times. Every time that he had a heartfelt discussion with anyone else, like, I feel like the conversations all were, like, the same. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, I've heard him explain this before. Like, I've heard him talk about what this means and what this, like, how this impacts him. And I don't need to reread it 14 times throughout the course of this book. It just kept coming, and, like, everything, by the end of the book, I was, like, ready for it to be over, which is sad because at its basis, like, I really liked the story itself of, like, a human being brought into this wolf family and it being super weird, but everybody knows that like something is special about him, even though he's told his whole life that he's not special. And he, like, everybody knows that he is a special part of them and their group, and he's brought into their pack. And it was really cool. I really liked reading that. And then obviously there's a lot of conflict in the background. And then obviously there's a lot of conflict where there's this, you know, ultra villain, evil other wolf that is coming for Joe. And like they're doing all that they can to prepare for when, you know, this pack gets attacked or whatever. Like the story was really good, but it was way too long. And that like almost ruined it for me. Like I hate to say that, but like it was way too long, and that took away the meaning of like some really good potential for some of these scenes. It was just a lot, and I feel like I don't even know what to like rate this. I feel like I can't rate it any higher than 3. Part of me wants to rate it lower simply because like it was irritating how long this was and how repetitive some of it was, but at the same time, like I don't know. I'll probably go with like 2.5 to 3 stars, but like, why? And now there's sequels. Like, I feel like this book was comprised of enough for like 3 separate books. And it was all in one, and there's other sequels, which I think the second book is about one of the other characters. But it's just a lot. Like, what the heck? Why is this necessary? I don't know. I did not have a great time with this. Okay, so I just finished reading Slewfoot, and I like still don't know what to think. This book took me so long to get through. Like I swear I've been reading it for like 4 or 5 days at least. It's Monday night. I'm like exhausted because I stayed up to try to finish this. So it's Monday, and I think I started this on Wednesday last week. So this book has taken me forever to get through. And honestly, I can't really tell why. But like, I think I'm still deciding on what I want to like officially rate this. But I feel like this book was so long for no reason. There was just like a lot of really slow moments that I feel like didn't need to be so slow. And I don't really, like, I feel like I don't even know how to explain it. So the story follows, I don't actually know how to pronounce her name, Abitha, I believe. It could be something else and I'm just very wrong, but that's what I've been saying in my brain. But it follows her after her husband dies really early on. That's part of the description. That she's a widow, her husband dies, and basically her farm, which was her husband's farm, is in danger of being taken from her by her dead husband's brother, who thinks that he is entitled to the land and the farm and everything. And so she is trying to figure out how to keep the farm for herself because, like, her and her husband have worked the land. Her and her husband, mostly her husband, but their family has been the ones that like raising the animals and whatnot. And so living in this very strict Puritan community where like the woman has no rights and the woman is obedient to the husband, or like to literally every man in the town. She like has no rights, and so the land is very close to being given to the brother-in-law. And in all of this, like, Wallace, the brother-in-law, becomes so like focused on destroying her and trying to prove that she is trying to trick him, that she's trying to steal from him what's rightfully his, when like it's like a whole mess of like who owns what and what's going on. But basically she ends up finding this like goat creature who ends up helping her. They agree to help each other because he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't remember like his identity or like how he came to be, and so they agree to help each other. Like, she's gonna help him figure out who he is, and he's going to help her with the land and, you know, to keep her property. And over time, people start to figure out that she is behaving really strangely. I mean, she's always behaved like strangely to everybody else, but they start to suspect that she's a witch. And this is in the 1600s, when even the idea that she could possibly be a witch, not even like proof, but like the idea is enough to have her literally like put in the stocks or put to death. And so Wallace, the brother-in-law, goes through all of these attempts to prove that she is a witch, prove that she's awful, and she's working with Samson, this like goat creature who's on a journey of his own to figure out who he is and what's going on, while she is on trial for being a witch, basically. And I just feel like with this story, there's basically like two storylines happening, where like you're following Abitha and her journey of like trying to prove that she's not a witch, when like she kind of is, because she's like working with Samson and doing like magic to grow her crops or make the bees produce more honey. Like, she is doing these things that they are accusing her of, but in a much different way than they're accusing her. So there's her story with like her dealings with the community and the town, but then there's also Samson's journey of trying to figure out who he is and his interactions with like different creatures. Some of them are like little like forest folk, I don't even know. And so there's these two stories happening, and throughout the entire book, I did not care about Samson's journey at all. Like, I only wanted to read about Abitha's story. And like, I don't know why that is, but I just could not comprehend what was going on with Samson. He was like dealing with different creatures, and like, I didn't get it. Like, I could not, I don't know. So I feel like I just really didn't want to hear his story. But I will say that the final part of this book is some of the best horror elements of the book, is when it gets more gory. There's more violence, and I really loved the portrayal of violence, and there were some pretty horrible things done to the people in this book, for different reasons. But I just like, I don't know, that was kind of a really good part for me. But like everything that had to do with Samson and his identity, and like he was like in a cave with this guy, and I just don't know, it didn't, maybe I'm just dumb, but like it was not working for me. And so like that element of the story I didn't love, which is why I think like I want to give this 4 stars. I'm like genuinely between 3 and 4, so I'm like at 3.5, I think, but I don't know if like Goodreads only lets you do like full stars, so I don't know if I want to do 3 or 4. The jury is still out on that, but I think I'm gonna land on 3.5 for this in general, because like I enjoyed reading it, like a lot of parts of it, but there were a lot of parts that I just like did not, it took me a long time to get through this, because like I didn't want to keep picking it up, because I knew that I was going to be reading about like parts of the story I didn't care about as much. So that was really hard, but like I'm glad I read it, and parts of it were really interesting, and the imagery, like the photos in this book are so beautiful, and they did really help me understand what I was thinking about. Like these creatures are kind of hard to fathom, but looking at the pictures really helped a lot, so that was really good. But even then, like, I visualize when I read. Like, I'm a big like, I visualize everything, and this was really hard to visualize sometimes, even with those images of the creatures in mind. I like, there were scenes of things that were happening that I was like, I don't even know how to picture this right now. And I think that's part of the disconnect for me, that I just had trouble visualizing it. This one was good but not great. I think that's where I'm gonna land. Okay, so I just realized I also never did an update for after I finished From Below, so let me do that. This book, I loved this book so much. So much. Okay, Darcy Coates is one of my favorite authors at this point. One of my favorite horror authors for sure. But just in general, I have really, really enjoyed or loved every book that I have read from her so far. And this book, I think, might be my new favorite, which is really weird to say because it's about underwater horror and I don't do water well. Like, deep water scares the heck out of me because I'm not a strong swimmer. And the idea of being underwater where like you have less control over your body, like that's the part that scares me a lot. Not necessarily underwater monsters or something, but like just the control that water has over you. So I was a little scared going into this book, which is why this is being used for the prompt of like something that scares me because this scares the heck out of me. So this book is about a documentary team that is going to investigate a 90-year-old shipwreck, and they're going to find out what happened because all of the like recordings of the like emergency calls that the ship had sent out before it sank, the distress calls were all very choppy and creepy, and nobody really knew what happened, but the whole ship sank. And so this documentary team is going to investigate, and it starts out like they're already on the ship, they're getting ready to go down, and their ROVs are not working. So like the actual like machines that are going to go down and record things for them are not working, and they're not quite sure why. So they end up having to go down and dive first, which I guess like originally they were going to send the like robots down to get the first footage, and then they were going to dive after that once they kind of had a feel for the land. Well, they don't have that, so they're all diving, and like they're all certified, but like some of them are barely certified for these deep dives, and it's terrifying. Like that's some of the scariest stuff for me, is the like human error and like technology error that's possible. Like there's at one point like their first dive down, the least experienced, he's the youngest and the least experienced of them, and he like barely passed his certification, and he starts lying about his oxygen levels. Like they're so far underwater that like it takes them, they said like upwards of 2 hours to like come back up to the surface because of all the decompression stops they have to make. And like he starts lying about his oxygen levels, which like I'm like, dude, why are you doing this? Like I was so anxious during that part, and it doesn't get any better. Things just like keep going wrong. My cat is looking at me under the door. Anyway, they end up going on multiple dives down to the shipwreck, and they're discovering that things are not right. They like catch things on their like body cams of like things that just are not adding up, and eventually they start seeing what they think are like bodies, but they don't really know. They're like, there's no way that's a body. So they're just really trying to figure it out and not die, because not only are they scared of what's down there, but they are also like fighting against the reality of like they're underwater and that's like dangerous as it is. So yes, it's a lot, and in true Darcy Coates fashion, this is a beautiful, haunting story that like had me so tense. I was so stressed for like the entirety of this book. Like it did not let up, and that is one of the things I love about her so much. She sets up such a creepy, eerie atmosphere that I am obsessed with, and it makes me not want to put the book down, which I absolutely love. For the first like third of the book, I was listening just audio, but then after that, for like the second and thirds of the book, I had physical and audio, and it was just so good. Like I was so in it, and by the end I was like, like so stressed, but like I didn't want it to be over because the things that they uncover are so interesting, and like the mechanics of it, like it was so good. Like I genuinely think this is my new favorite Darcy Coates out of the like 4 maybe that I've read so far. And like I did not expect this to be my favorite because of how terrified I was of the water, but like hello, it was so good. And like I heard, like talking to Mel about it, and she had mentioned that it's kind of like Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes, which Dead Silence was my favorite book that I read in 2022. I was obsessed with that book. I still think about it on a regular basis. I love that book. And at first I compared From Below to Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant, which I read over the summer, and I really liked that one too, but it was way too long. I was so bored in the first half. I was so bored I almost gave up on it. The second half was really, really good. I gave it 3 stars, I think, because the first half was unnecessary. Like it was just so dull. I wanted to like scream. But I feel like this book is a perfect combination between Into the Drowning Deep and Dead Silence. Like it's the perfect combination, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful, and I love it so much. And I'm only comparing it to those two because those are the 2 that I read before this one. Obviously, if you read this before either of those, then like it'll feel like a different comparison, but that's why I'm comparing this to those, because I have read both of those first, and this just like is everything to me. Like I'm still thinking about this book. I'm still thinking about how creepy it was when they were underwater and the things that they encountered, because it was horrifying. Not just for me, but like it was horrifying. So like Darcy Coates, brilliant. Love this book so much. 5 stars completely, and like I think it's my new favorite. I still really love The Carol Haunt, but like I don't know, something about this one is just screaming to me. So this was such a good read for this weekend. Okay, we have come to the end of another Halloweekend, which unfortunately means that we have come to the end of the final Halloweekend, and I'm actually really sad. But I have quite a few things to review from the weekend. I feel like this was just a really, really crazy time because it was extra long, Thursday to Tuesday, and I just feel like there is so much happening that I am overwhelmed. But let's just go over a review of what I read, what happened. So I did end up reading a total of 4 books over the course of the weekend, which it was extra long, so that kind of makes sense that I was able to read a little more than the other weekends. So I started off by reading Slewfoot by Brahm, and this one I landed on 3.5 stars for my rating. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I didn't dislike it. So that's pretty good. It just took me forever to get through. Like I started it on Wednesday night, I think. Maybe Thursday, I can't remember. And then I didn't finish it until like Sunday. Or Monday? Monday, actually, maybe. I don't remember. It took me way too long to get through this, and yeah, but it was still like a good read. I'm glad I read it. But the next one that I read was From Below by Darcy Coates, and I freaking love this book. Full 5 stars, and it might be my new favorite Darcy. So I can't even express how much I loved this, despite it being so terrifying to me, but it's fine. I also read Wolf Song by TJ Klune with Michelle, and this book was, I don't even know what to think. I gave it 3 stars. I just feel like my brain is still not able to like really comprehend everything that book had, but it was also way too long. Like I don't know what it is, but lately I feel like a lot of the books I've been reading, I've felt like this could have been done in half the time, and Wolf Song at least half the time. It was very repetitive and just way too long, and I don't think I'm gonna keep going with the series. But it was fine. It was like a NetGalley reprint arc that I had, so like I love checking off my NetGalley reads, so that was at least productive for that, but otherwise I did not love reading that. And then there's one more book that I literally didn't even do a vlog for, so you have no idea that I was reading it unless you were there for some of the sprints. But I read A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. this is due back to the library on November 2nd. So like I had to finish this really, really quickly. Same day as Slewfoot. They were both due. So I needed to get to this one, even though it's not really like Halloween related, but actually it ended up being okay. I think I'm landing on 4 stars. I'm kind of like between 3.5 and 4, I think, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go with a 4-star rating for this one. This is technically on my November TBR, but I ended up having to read it early. So this one is about Effie and Preston, who end up working at this old manor of a very beloved author. And Effie is there as an architect to redesign the home that is like on the side of a cliff that is like slowly deteriorating from the like sea mist and everything. And then Preston is there as a literature student to kind of delve deep into the author's work. But each of them are there for kind of different reasons, because Effie is a huge fan of the author and Preston is also a fan, but he is actually there to question the authenticity of the authorship, because he believes that maybe this guy, Emrys Meriden, didn't actually write the stories that are published in his name and are like so beloved and part of like the folklore of the world. And so the two are going to butt heads, but then they're going to end up working together to try to uncover the truth, because at the core of everything, both of them want the truth to be revealed. And I think that's a really good foundation for the plot, is them trying to figure this out. Meanwhile, like the house is like deteriorating, but eventually they end up uncovering a lot of secrets. The area floods a lot, and so they're like kind of a race against time to figure all this out before the storms come that like will potentially cause more flooding. And the story itself is really, really interesting, and I loved that the characters were trying to like uncover this truth and coming at it from an angle of like one of them really, really doesn't want the truth to be different from what she's known her whole life, and the other one, like obviously he would be disappointed to know that things were a lie, but ultimately like he just wants to know, and he wants to be the one to uncover these secrets. And I just think it was really cool. There is a romance. I can't say I loved it. I feel like it was kind of forced in some ways, which kind of bothered me, and like one of the reasons why I didn't give it 5 stars. Like I demolished this in like one day, but I couldn't give it a full 5 stars. Like the romance felt kind of forced. Like, yes, of course there's 2 main characters that are put together in this situation, so of course they're gonna fall in love, but like it didn't feel super well balanced there. There were also a lot of things about Effie's life. She's the only female student at the architecture school, and so there's a lot of complications that come with that, being the only woman surrounded by a bunch of men. And that was a very important plot point that then fed into a lot of what she did in the book. And I loved that this was tackling some really difficult concepts in regards to like a woman's place in academia, because she was not seen on the same level as all of her male peers. And very early on you find out that she was a victim of one of her professors essentially convincing her to be in a relationship that she, as a young woman, did not feel that she could say no or should say no. And so she got into this really difficult situation that then the whole school found out, and everybody treated her differently. And that also plays a role throughout the story, that at first I was afraid that this was just going to be like a tool of like, let's just make this interesting, but I am really, really glad to say that it did tie in a little bit more, and I ended up liking where the story went with this part. But yeah, I think the part that also disconnected for me in this book is alarmingly the fantasy element, which is that the author that she loves so much wrote stories about a fairy king, and the fairy king is then something that she thought about her whole life, something that she like genuinely believed that she saw in her real life, and it caused people around her to think that she was crazy because she would see things that weren't there. And there was this element of her not knowing real from not real throughout the whole story. and things did tie together by the end, but I don't know, sometimes the Fairy King side of the story was a little bit weird to me. Like it tied in, but there were times where I just didn't like get what the point was. So it's one of those books that I feel like throughout reading it, like it kept my attention really, really well, but throughout reading it, there were a lot of times where I felt like I'm not quite sure where this is going. I'm not sure what's happening. There's elements here and there that like just don't make the most sense. But by the end, everything comes together in this really, really nice package. And I like that. But also I'm like, I really wish that I felt more cohesive throughout the story. But by the end, I felt pretty good about it, which is why I probably, if the ending had not been as good as it was, this probably would have only had 3 stars, but I do like the way things were kind of wrapped up in a bow. So I gave this one 4 stars, and surprise, I read a 4th book for the weekend. So that's really good, and now my library books can go back before they are officially due. But now, aside from reading, I feel like I also had a lot of things happening over the weekend. I don't remember Thursday and Friday. I know there were sprints and things happening, but like my brain can't actually remember what was going on. But Saturday was the book event with Ashley Winstead and Danielle Valentine that I went to with Lexi, and that was super fun. So incredible getting to hear them talk about their books. I literally love hearing authors talk so excitedly about the books that they have written and are writing, because I cannot wait for some of the things that they have coming up. Like they give like little snippets that's just enough to make you be like, where is it? I need it now. And so I'm really excited for what they have coming, but I also was able to buy a couple of more books and get those signed. And then I left one behind. I'm so mad at myself. I got home and was unpacking my bag to like get all the books out. And I was even going to take a video of like all of the signatures that I got, because Ashley Winstead wrote a couple cute notes in them. And as I was pulling the books out, I realized that I left Midnight is the Darkest Hour on the table at the event, because we were like the last ones in line basically, and we were getting some final pictures with her. And Ashley asked us to take a picture with her, and I got super distracted and I put my book down on the table, and then I never picked it back up when I left. And I'm super mad at myself, but Lexi is a lifesaver and is going to go pick it up for me. I'm just so mad at myself. But that was a fun twist to the day, I guess. It was really great getting to see Lexi. We got lunch, went to the event, and it's just always nice to see Lexi. So that was a good day. And then I honestly can't even remember what Sunday was. I feel like there were sprints. I think there were some sprints on Sunday and a lot of reading. And actually I read From Below on Saturday and Sunday. So I know I read From Below for most of Sunday. And then we had the pumpkin event, which I ended up missing, but also didn't have a pumpkin for it. So I was kind of disappointed by that. And then we had all day sprints on Tuesday, and it was so much fun getting to watch them, getting to participate in them, just chatting with people. This has been such a fun month, and I'm really sad that it's over, because this like really motivated me to read, knowing that I had like specific vibes that I was going for each of the books. I mean, I really tried to stick mostly to horror or thriller or something spooky and creepy and weird for the most of the month. So that was really nice to like have that foundation of kind of what I'm aiming to read. And now I have my November TBR that I can hope that I stick to, but who knows if that's gonna happen. I already broke it because this was on my November TBR and I read it in October, on October 31st. So like, I already messed that up. But anyway, now that we've come to the end, I hope that everybody has had a good time participating in Halloweekend. This was great for me. I hope it was great for you. And make sure that you are subscribed to all of the co-hosts for Halloweekend. They are in the description, and if you are not subscribed already, what are you doing with your life? You need to be subscribed to them. They're incredible. They make the best videos, and you need to follow along with them. I also would appreciate if you subscribe to me, because I am really excited for the videos I have coming out in the coming weeks, and I have big plans for other things. Some of you may be aware that there may or may not be an IKEA video at some point, so make sure that you are following along so you don't miss out on all the fun there. Let me know in the comments if you have read any of the books that I read for this weekend. Maybe you've added some onto your November TBR because you heard about them. Now that it is November, it is sad that spooky season is technically over, but like, is it really? Spooky season lives on in our hearts. So I am excited to keep reading the spooky books and watching the spooky movies because I am sad that I did not watch as many horror movies as I wanted to in October. I missed out on a lot of my like staple movies, which I mentioned. Like, I love the Halloween movies. Like, Michael Myers is my favorite, like, classic horror villain, and I love the Halloween movies, but like 4 and 5 are my favorites, like absolute favorites, and I don't like watching them just like out of place. I do want to watch 1 and 2 and then 4 and 5, and I didn't have time to do that. So like, I still need to watch those even though it's November. Like, I still have to do that. And I also never finished watching the Saw movies. I don't even remember if I mentioned that, but I started watching the Saw movies in order. I made it through 3 of them and I didn't get any further. But also, like, I try to have them on in the background and then I just watch them. I pay too close attention and then I'm not doing my like actual work or reading. So it's been a really hard balance month for me, but it's okay because spooky season never is truly over. It can be spooky season anytime you want to be spooky. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, and I'm probably going to keep watching the horror movies. I'm going to keep reading the horror books because that's just what I love to do. I can't believe that is over, but thank you for hanging out with me for Halloweekend, and I will see you next year for Halloweekend round 3. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye!